First reading, a bill for an act to implement Article 6 of the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights and for related purposes.
The member for Hughes.
I move that this bill be now read a second time. Mr Speaker, firstly, I'd like to thank Carsten, the truck driver that drove me to Parliament House this morning. God bless the truck drivers of Australia, and I dedicate this bill to them. 58 years ago, when I was born, I won one of the greatest lotteries in life, because I was born in the free and democratic nation of Australia. I was bestowed as my birthright as an Australian freedoms and liberties that have only ever been enjoyed by a small percentage of people throughout human history. And those freedoms that were my birthright did not come for free. They were fought for and won in places with names such as Beersheba, Fromelles, Pozieres, Bullecourt, the Coral Sea, Tobruk, Kapiong, Long Tan, and thousands of others. And as politicians, we are reminded every single day when we come to this place. When we look out the main entrance and we see in perfect alignment across Old Parliament House, across Lake Burley Griffin, up to Anzac Parade, to the War Memorial, to a reminder that the freedoms and liberties that we enjoy have been won by the sacrifices of over 100,000 Australians that have given their lives in war to protect and safeguard those freedoms. And one of the great things about our nation is that we have extended those freedoms to others that have come across the seas. So when someone as a new migrant decides to take an oath of citizenship and declare their allegiance to our country, they obtain the same birthrights that I had as an Australian, the same freedoms and liberties. And as a nation, we work hard to bring those same freedoms and liberties that are the birthrights of every single Australian to others around the world. We participate and we sign and commit ourselves to international treaties such as the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights. Article 6.1 of this treaty, to which Australia is a signatory of, provides any preventative, diagnostic and therapeutic medical intervention is only to be carried out with the prior, free and informed consent of the person concerned, based on adequate information. It goes on. The consent should, where appropriate, be expressed and may be withdrawn by the person concerned at any time and for any reason, without disadvantage or prejudice. That is what we as a nation have signed up to as an international treaty. Yet we find ourselves here in 2021, that the freedoms and the birthrights of Australians have been stolen. Stolen mostly by unelected bureaucrats and cowardly politicians that are violating human rights and that are violating the principles of the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights. Let's be absolutely clear about this. The New South Wales Premier, Berejiklian, and her Health Minister Hazzard, with New South Wales Parliament suspended, are engaging in conduct which is a violation and abuse of human rights. The coercion and the bullying of Australians to undergo any type of medical intervention is a violation of human rights and a violation of the principles of Australia's international human rights obligations. Domestic passports are a violation of human rights. And yet, we stand here in this Parliament today with medical apartheid being enforced across the nation. Submit, or you'll never get your freedoms back. You'll be excluded from society, denied the freedom to travel, denied access to our beaches, denied access to our national parks. This should outrage every single one of us. Also, you'll be prevented from opening your business. We will deny you the freedom to earn a living. You will lose your job. You'll lose your family home unless you submit to taking a medical intervention. This is something that we have fought against. This is something against the Anzac spirit. What is wrong with you people? And this from a party in New South Wales that on their website boasts, and I quote, that they so supposedly believe in the inalienable rights and freedoms of all people? What a fraud. This statement is a fraud upon the electorate of Australia, a betrayal of Liberal Party values and a betrayal of everything it means to be an Australian. Shame on you, Berejiklian. Shame on you, Hazzard. Shame on you, Palisade. Shame on you, Andrews. Shame on the lot of you. Because when you use threats of inflicting disadvantage or inflicting prejudice upon Australians because they don't submit to your demands for medical intervention, you are engaging in abuses of human rights. And history will condemn you for eternity, condemn you as violators of human rights. And shame on every member of this House that cowardly hides under their desk, that refuses to speak up, to defend the freedoms and liberties of Australians. Now, Mr. Speaker, some may argue, well, it's okay to abuse human rights in this circumstance. That appears to be the formal position of the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the Nationals and the Greens. Now, firstly, this position relies upon the Doherty modelling. However, this modelling is fundamentally flawed. It uses assumptions that are both out of date and erroneous. Just look at the data out of Israel, and it will show you that the Doherty modelling's assumptions are dodgy at the best. And remember, we are not just talking about any old medical intervention. We are talking about a medical intervention that has zero long-term safety data. Don't believe me? I will quote directly from the TGA's recent report dated July 2021. I go to this, page 30 of 37, and it talks about Pfizer's application. And it says, and I quote, "The submitted data has the following limitations. The long-term safety is not known." But it's even worse than that. It goes on, and they admit here, they say the VE, which is the vaccine efficacy, against variants of concern, which of course of Delta, has not been assessed. The TGA's own documents. So this means it hasn't been assessed against Delta, and we have no idea what the long-term safety data is. And yet we are mandating this upon millions of Australians and forcing them with the threat that they will lose their jobs, that they'll be unable to put food on the table for their family, that they won't be able to pay their mortgage. What is wrong with you people? Seriously. Deputy Speaker, and it even is worse. Therefore, the purpose of this bill is to incorporate the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights into Australian law, and to hold those that violate and abuse human rights, to bring them to account and to bring them to justice. I commend this bill to the House, and I call on the government to urgently bring it on for debate and for a vote. And let history record where every member of this parliament sits on this issue.
Is the motion seconded? The member for Dawson.
The motion is seconded, Mr Speaker.
Question is that this bill be now read a second time. The time allotted for this debate has expired. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made an order of the day for the next sitting.